Welcome into Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Been talking Phillies baseball for years over at 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio. And now with you here on Locked On Phillies, we have a great Friday show planned for you. Where the Phillies rank lineup-wise in the NL East, followed by some MLB Lockout update. And we've got the closer where we recap what we did for this week. I set up the poll for next week, and I give you a look ahead to what we're going to get into as we finish out some of these rankings in next week's podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's get into it.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right. It is Connor Thomas right here. This is Locked On Philly. So exactly what I said is what we're going to lead off with. We're ranking the lineups in the NL East today. I've already done the starting rotations. On Wednesday's episode, we did the bullpen. The Phillies, I ranked them as the best starting rotation in the NL East. The bullpen, I ranked them near the bottom. You can go ahead and listen to both of those episodes. But today, the lineup. And I think this is the most determinant. Pitching's important. Pitching's really, really important when you get to the playoff time. Bullpen's equally as important. You got to be able to close out games. But I think the lineup is the most indicative of regular season record. So this basically is what I'm looking at. There's more that goes into it, and we'll do those rankings in time. But this will be as equal to my actual ranking of these teams in the NL East as any other of these specific types or parts of the team rankings, rather, that we're going to go through. So let's get into it. Starting off with the fifth team in the NL East, I'm going with the Washington Nationals. This is the easiest selection of any of these that I've done so far. They basically sold everybody at the trade deadline last year, turned into a tanking type team, moved on from Trey Turner, one of their brightest young stars, rather than re-signing him. Shows you all you need to know. The only names even worth noting in their lineup right now are Juan Soto and Josh Bell, who are probably going to be in the 3-4 hole again. Now, Juan Soto could very well be the best hitter in baseball, but he's got absolutely nothing else to work with. And Josh Bell is not the Josh Bell that we saw in Pittsburgh that was hitting balls into, the Allegheny River every single day. No, he's not that guy anymore. Outside of those two, you're looking at Lane Thomas, Keibert Ruiz. Carter Kieboom's an all right piece over there at third base, but this lineup doesn't really offer all that much. It's why the Nationals will probably be the worst team in the division this year, and it's why I've got them as the fifth most potent lineup in the NL East in 2022. Coming in fourth, we're going south, further south than Washington, to Miami. I've got the Marlins as the fourth best lineup in the division this year. Now, they're just like we talked with their starting rotation and their bullpen. They've got a lot of young talent. They could be really good in a couple years. And hopefully whoever takes over for Derek Jeter, who stepped away from the organization earlier this week, does a better job of building that up and creating a little bit of a better situation at the major league level. But looking at what they have just for this one season, unfortunately, I got to put them fourth. And they don't deserve really a fourth spot in the division. They're more of prisoners of how good the next three teams' lineups really are. You look at some of these names. Jazz Chisholm, who's coming into his own as a great middle infielder. Solid at the plate. Could be better. Miguel Rojas, a solid option to lead off for them. He'll probably lead off and spend a lot of time in that one hole this year. Some of the guys in the middle of the lineup, you're looking at a couple power guys. Avisail Garcia is probably going to hit him over 20 bombs. Same with Jesus Aguilar. They've got some pieces, but then you look at the bottom part, and you look at a Brian Anderson, a Brian De La Cruz, like the guys that finish it out. It's not a totally well-rounded lineup. There's some pieces, but not enough for them to crack the top three of the division. I think they could be there in a year or two, but for the time being, they're kind of hampered by some teams that are more playoff competition ready. Now, this is the one that's going to get some people angry. There's definitely going to be some people who enjoy wearing their orange and blue jerseys that are not going to be happy with me for this one. My third best lineup in the NL East is the New York Mets. Now, they're going to go out and they're going to spend. When free agency opens, this could totally change. If they go out and they, sign a Carlos Correa, or a Trevor Story or a Nick Castellanos and just throw money at someone and say, hey, we'll figure out where he fits into the lineup and into his fielding position when he gets here. This could totally change. But for the time being, I've got the Mets at 3. They've got some solid pieces. Francisco Lindor is always going to be great. He's always going to have a great year. Pete Alonso, we know what type of power he has. Rookie home run record holder. Didn't have as great of a year last year, but he's proven he can hit with power at the major league level. And some of the additional pieces like Brandon Nimmo is a guy who's going to hit probably like 270, 275 every year. They go out and they get Starling Marte to play the outfield for them, probably going to hold down the center field spot with Michael Conforto as a free agent, declining his option with the team. Well, Starling Marte was one of the highest profile options to fill an outfield spot in free agency this year. They bring him in, throw some money at him. He builds out part of a lineup that's going to be dangerous. Eduardo Escobar and Marcana are the ones that round out like the back end of that. And of course, now we've got the DH in the NL. Didn't really talk about it with Miami and with Washington because they don't really have the depth to fill that DH role dangerously. Well, the Mets do, and they already do. Not only can they do it at the current time, but with what they could do in free agency when the MLB season opens back up and we're allowed to see free agents be signed, this lineup could get a whole lot more dangerous. But for the current time, they're hanging in third place. Now in second place, I couldn't put them at 1. They didn't deserve to be at 1. It might be a stretch to some that I even put them at 2, but I have the Phillies as the second best lineup in the NL East. You just look at it. You've got the reigning NL MVP batting in the 3-hole every single day in Bryce Harper. That's a lock. He's great. He very well could be the best player on any team in this division again this year. Juan Soto will challenge him for it. Ronald Acuna, when he comes back, will challenge for that. But I really like Bryce Harper, obviously, in that 3-hole. Why wouldn't you? And you look at the guys that surround him. Rhys Hoskins, for all bad he is in the field, was great at the dish down the stretch before he had a season-ending injury. JT Realmuto, one of the best offensive catchers in baseball. Gene Segura, going to be a solid leadoff guy again, batted nearly 300 last year. And then you look at the rest, they could make a couple additions, but as it currently stands, Alec Bohm, you could put him in the DH hole now with the DH as an option. And that means you could bring in another, I don't know, he's maybe a little bit more offensive-minded than defensive, but like a Matt Vierling could be the DH as well. That could add to the potency of this lineup. It's not a beautiful end to the lineup, which is why I can't put them as number 1. And you've got to work some stuff out, fill some outfield spots. So Mickey Moniak and Adam Hazley are not the guys that are getting starting time on opening day. But the top half of this lineup is enough to carry them. They have better star power and better overall top-end talent hitting-wise than what the Mets have right now. It's why they're in number 2. And then number 1, I can't put them anywhere other than 1. It's got to be Atlanta. The Braves won the World Series last year. It's because they were so good offensively. They had a solid pitching staff. But you remember, Mike Soroka goes down for the entire year early. They lose the ace of their staff. They had a couple struggles with their pitching staff early, and then they just come on strong and get hot at the right time. You look at this. Dansby Swanson, great leadoff hitter, going to be awesome. Ozzie Alvis, one of the great young middle infielders in baseball, to couple with Dansby Swanson up the middle and solid 2-hole guy. Austin Riley, who a lot of people felt should have deserved more MVP consideration than what he got last year. Marcell Ozuna, a power hitter that you could put in the 4-hole. All of this, not even assuming Ronald Acuna is in the lineup. If he's healthy, when he's healthy, it's going to be an incredibly dangerous lineup. Travis d'Arnaud, not bad as a catcher at the dish. And, of course, the Braves can still add in free agency. And, meanwhile, they've got the designated hitter role that they could fill with some other guys off their bench. They weren't a totally deep team last year, but they can add some guys and really like a William Contreras, if they want to go ahead and bat him rather than having to play him at catcher over d'Arnaud. He could be a good option. Jonathan Lucroy, another catcher that you've heard before. Chadwick Tromp was a younger player who hit a bunch of home runs last year. Like, he's a guy that, or maybe not a bunch of home runs, but got a hot stretch. They could fill out this lineup with the DH really well. They're clearly the best lineup in the division. And barring anything crazy in free agency, they'll probably hold that down for the entirety of the 2022 season. That's where I'm ranking everybody for the starting lineups. Excuse me there. It feels so bad. I got something caught in my throat. It just, my body doesn't agree with ranking Atlanta that high, but I got to give them their props. They won the World Series last year, and they're returning the majority of those guys. Now, notice I didn't mention a certain name for them. Freddie Freeman Still not sure if he's going to be back. If he is, it's a huge boost to their lineup. If not, that could be the key to setting them back. But right now, all things fair, Atlanta is the best lineup in the NL East in my assumption. Coming up on the other side, we're going to jump into our Friday MLB Lockout update and why I think they're actually closer to a deal than it may feel like right now. That on the other side, we'll be right back. But first, I want to tell you about Built Bar. So we're into March. The weather's changing. I'm getting ready for a trip to New Orleans. I got to be in good shape for that. And I've been using Built Bar to do it because they are great tasting protein bars. You got to normally sacrifice if you want to do the protein bars. They taste bad. You want to have candy, so you try and fill it in with a bar that doesn't taste all that good. No, not with Built Bar. They got 100% chocolate coating. It tastes awesome. Listen to some of these flavors. This is for their puffs, which is protein-infused marshmallows, cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. Man, those are great. And you're getting up to 17 grams of protein in each one of these. It's amazing. Plus their regular flavors, not the marshmallow infused, mint brownie, coconut almond, all of these, and they come out with new flavors all the time. It's amazing. It makes it so easy to eat well, and it gets you the numbers you need on those macros to hit your goals for getting in shape for summer. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first and then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every single time. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So like I said, we've got our MLB lockout update here. It's not great news. Of course, I'm sure you've heard the news by this point. Rob Manfred spoke earlier this week and said that because the MLB fell short of reaching a deal prior to their deadline of I believe it was the 28th of February, and then they took it to the next Monday, so this Monday, before they actually canceled games, but they fell short. Games have been officially canceled. The first couple series of the 2022 season gone. See ya. Which it sucks. It really sucks. If you're listening to this, you're a baseball fan. You're a huge baseball fan, not just Phillies, but the MLB in general. And to see the state of this game the way it is not great. But I think they're closer to a deal than what it might feel like right now. And we've got to remember, oftentimes, it's darkest before the dawn. Let's look at what's going on as far as the negotiations and what the players and the owners actually got into. And you'll see kind of the patterns of why I think they're closer to a deal than it might feel. When you hear games get canceled, your immediate thing is, oh my goodness, how'd they let this happen? It feels like we're going to be without baseball forever. It's this whole immediate, it's like the cold water is splashing you awake. Everything's panic. Well, that makes it feel like we're further away than we actually are. The reality is some great progress was made in the past week or so as the MLB PA and the MLB owners tried to come to an agreement. Now, they should have been doing this for months prior. It does not absolve them. But the fact of the matter is the deadline did force them to get closer on the money issues and agree to some smaller ancillary things. And my biggest key, the biggest little hint that I saw this week that leans towards, hey, a deal is coming soon, is that the reports now from the insiders, the Bob Nightingales, the Jeff Passons, have turned to some ancillary things. We've heard reports about the MLB wanting a 14-team playoff pool earlier this week. The players want to keep that to 12. Regardless of the difference of opinion there, they're talking about ancillary pieces. It's not the money, the major millions and millions and millions of dollars apart. Now we're talking about things like banning the shift. We're talking about a pitch clock. We're talking about the playoff field and how many teams make it. The fact that these smaller details are what's more in the news following the marathon meetings that these two sides had leading up to Monday's deadline. Well, it was really Saturday's deadline, I believe, that turned into Monday's deadline. Anyway, the stuff leading up to the cancellation of games clearly seems like it has paid off to some amount. Not enough that the season can start, but enough that there are some ancillary details being worked out. What does it really mean as far as when the season will start? Well, that depends on how quickly they can actually ink everything. And I cannot guarantee, because if it was up to me, I would have had these two sides talking forever ago. I would have hoped it happened sooner. And it's nonsensical that we even got to this point. So it's very possible that more nonsensical news is coming. That's a further delay in baseball. But it seems to me like we're getting there. We're getting close. We're right around the corner. I'd imagine in the next week or two, we'll see a deal get inked. But what that means, if a week or two goes, they've got to make room for some type of spring training. It's going to be a shortened spring training. They're going to have to push back the season more. I'd imagine the first games are not played in April. They're played closer to let me get my month straight. What's the month after April? Yeah, I think it's May. Yes, I think that the first game of the MLB season will be played in the month of May, which is unfortunate. You lose all the games in the calendar month of April, but that means that you can still probably get 100 games in, and we'll figure out how much accelerated they want the season to be. That's my optimism when it comes to the MLB lockout. Now, the reality is we should all be really, really ticked off at how the owners, players, the entirety of this negotiation has been handled by both sides. I side more with the players as far as who's owed more, but the negotiations have been handled poorly. Start to finish, it's led to this delay. As a baseball fan, you should be upset. I'm trying to be optimistic, and I think those breadcrumbs do show that we could be closer to a deal than it feels when we think about the ineptitude of both of these sides in the negotiations to this point. But the bottom line is I think they're getting closer, and hopefully we've got baseball right around the corner. But until then, of course, we'll still be rolling here on Locked On MLB Podcast Network and, of course, Locked On Phillies. We'll have everything. We have plenty of content. Something else to look out for this weekend, I'm going to post a little clip of my time with Lindsey Crosby, who runs Locked On MLB Prospects. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. But you should check out Locked On MLB Prospects too, because Lindsey is a prospect encyclopedia. He's amazing. You already heard our crossover episode and all the stuff he had on Bryce Stott, Mick Abel, Andrew Painter, all these young possible great players at the major league level for the Philadelphia Phillies. And he's going deep on the MLB Stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you check out all the other stuff that Lindsey's putting out. He's doing amazing stuff to fill the content void that happens when there's no games being played. Well, these prospects are still out there. So make sure you check on Locked On MLB Prospects. And we've got another week's worth that we're going to tell you about in the closer here in a second. Another week's worth of rankings of different parts of the NL East. Then we have a roundtable coming up with all of the other NL East hosts, everything like that, where we'll go through. They'll yell at me about a bunch of my rankings. I might yell at them about a bunch of their rankings, unless they got the Phillies in first for everything, which they won't. It'll be fun, though. We have a bunch of content planned. And today's episode, that content wraps up with the closer, where we'll recap what we did this past week. And I'll give you the first ever weekend poll for our Monday upcoming Off the Poll segment. It's a great one about that DH position and why I think the Phillies lineup could get even better if they make the right call at this one spot. Before we hit the closer, I just want to tell you guys about Bet Online. So football season's over, but basketball season, it is cooking right now. I was just at James Harden's home debut for the Sixers. Man, that building's incredible. And you know what I did? Put some money on the game. There's a lot of great stuff you can bet on right now, and Bet Online is the best place to find all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, and you can even find out where the next fired coach is going to land. They've got everything. It's why betonline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. All of them. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. They even came out with odds. I was just talking about when the MLB season is going to get started. You could bet on what month the first MLB regular season game is played in. My money's on May. We'll see where you guys end up, but you can put it anywhere. And it's not just baseball, not just basketball, not just football. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds. They've got everything you can imagine and all the information on all of it. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. It's time for the closer, our final segment every Friday episode where we go back through what we covered for the week, take a look forward to next week's episodes, and introduce our poll for our Monday Off the Poll segment. So first, let's recap what we went through this week. Monday, we outlined the best starting rotations in the NL East. You're going to want to listen to where I had the Phillies ranked. Go back, check it out. I'm really optimistic on the Phillies starting rotation because of the power that they have with Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, and what I think will be a little regression year, but, well, you can hear what I said. I like them a lot. On Wednesday's episode, we ranked the bullpens. I don't like the Phillies bullpen as much, but there was some optimism there. And, of course, you got to know what other teams you want to look out for. Who was the top team? Go ahead and check that out. A couple of great episodes. Monday, we also went ahead and we went through a little bit of information on some free agent spotlight. We talked about another outfielder. You want to go and check that one out. I think he'd be a great fit to make the Phillies lineup that we talked about earlier in this episode even better. And then on Wednesday, we went ahead and we went through, talked about another free agent spotlight. A guy, I think he might be a little bit pricey, but if the Phillies want to pay, another option to build that lineup out. Some good stuff earlier in this week's episodes. And coming up next week, we've got some rankings of other things like fielding and defense, total team, all this good stuff where we'll rank out the NL East teams. You're not going to want to miss it. Monday, we're going to get into a little bit more of a free agent spotlight too. Now, as we run out of free agents, we're going to have some fun new segments, and I'm going to debut one of those Wednesday following our daily ranking of a certain part of each team in the NL East. So all of that good stuff is coming to you this coming week, along with on Monday, the very first iteration of Off the Poll, which is our poll segment. Just to recap what that exactly is, I'm going to put out a poll from our Locked On Phillies Twitter account. You can respond on there. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Phillies. Be putting out content. You can check out these episodes. I tweet out all the episodes every day when we put this out. Some additional content. We'll have an additional little clip of me and Lindsey Crosby for our crossover. But anyway, back to Off the Poll, rather. So this weekend's poll, and you'll be able to see this all typed out and everything. You don't have to write it down. Which of these two players is the better option for the Philadelphia Phillies at designated hitter in 2022? The two options, Alec Bohm, Rhys Hoskins. I'm not going to share with you my opinion. You'll hear it on Monday. I don't want to influence you, but you tell me who you'd rather see spend the most time in the designated hitter spot in 2022 between those two options. Rhys Hoskins, Alec Bohm. We'll go ahead and check that out on Monday. I'll run through some of your responses. We'll run through the results of the poll, obviously, and then I'll give you my opinions, where I would have voted, and whether or not I agree with or disagree with the general consensus of all you that voted out there. That's all we've got for the week. It was a fun week of content. We're going to have another one next one, and hopefully next week, if my optimism that we just talked about in the MLB Lockout update is rightly placed, we may have some better news about when baseball will be back on our TV screens, back on the grass in the ballparks, when we can get out and watch our teams again. Hoping, fingers crossed, for some good news this upcoming week. But of course, either way, you'll have good episodes right here at Locked On Phillies. Real quick before we're out of here, I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. Now make your second listen, Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, make sure you just call him Sully, brings you this unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. He's basically a baseball encyclopedia. You know, I talked about Lindsey Crosby with MLB Prospects is a prospect encyclopedia. Well, Sully's the same way for the MLB in general. He's awesome. It's a great show. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. That'll be a wrap on another great week here on Locked On Phillies, and I will talk to you all on Monday.